Hello and welcome. My name is Torbjörn Nordling and I'm an assistant professor in automatic control at the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the National Shandong University and also the general chair of this workshop. Now behind me I have the NCKU library, which was opened in 2001. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our honorary chair, Chair Professor Wu, for his welcome.
It is a pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of the National Shandong University in Taiwan. I'm proud that our team, the NCKU Parkinson's Disease Quantifiers, are one of the finalists in the OpenCV AI competition. They are also arranging this workshop. Now let us all learn computer vision and AI using the OAK-D camera together.
As you can see, it's a sunny day in Tainan, and I'm happy to tell you that we have over 800 registered participants for this workshop series. Now, you are welcome to subscribe to our YouTube and Twitch channels and to press the alarm button if you wish to be notified when we publish a video. Now it's my honor to introduce to you Anwaar Ulhaq, lecturer and deputy leader of Machine Vision and Digital Health Research at Charles Sturt University in Australia. Anwaar has his PhD from Monash University in Australia, and his interest is to apply signal processing, computer vision, and artificial intelligence, and he will today be presenting to us a work titled The Green Edge of Computer Vision.
Hello everyone, my name is Anwar. I'm a lecturer at the Charles Sturt University in Australia. Today I'm presenting a talk about the use of computer vision for environment protection. But before I start, first of all, I really want to thank all the workshop participants and also the organizers for inviting me and listening to my talk. So let's get started. So as we know, there is a kind of a trade-off going on between the environment and technology. We want to live in a world where we have facilities all around. So we are very fond of technology and its use, and we want to facilitate our lives. On the other hand, we have somehow a kind of a contrast with the environment and the nature. Because the nature, we are somehow going away from the nature. So the idea is like, how can we resolve this kind of a trade-off between two? What if we use the technology to improve our environment and protect our environment? We all are well aware of a term which is there from years and years now. We are looking for a smart city environment where we have access to different technologies, including Internet of Things, cloud computing, edge computing, artificial intelligence, sensors, a lot of things. Okay, so that our life becomes better and better every day with the use of technology. But it's like we are quite used to with this sort of trend, because every new day we people in technology say like the new big thing is coming, but we need to evaluate it over the period of time, like which one is good for us. One of the technology which has really evolved over a period of time, very short time, maybe we can say 50 years or so, is artificial intelligence. In artificial intelligence, especially when it started, the hype was really high, and we were thinking like we will be able to solve this problem within no time, but it didn't happen. But a recent rise in the last decade, we have seen because of the deep learning. Some success of deep learning has contributed into the rise of AI again, and we are very excited into the second round of AI. Where the deep learning is now really solving most of the problems which we just promised when the AI scientists started working on AI projects. So now, if we think in context of the smart cities, we now have the technology in computer vision which are able to recognize most of the things around us. Like we can do a kind of semantic segmentation, like we can find out different objects within no time. We can see like these all different kind of objects around us are easily recognized with the help of semantic segmentation and other techniques in computer vision. It gives us a kind of a surrounding with like we are visually aware, like we have AI devices which are visually aware like what's going around them, what different objects are around them. But not only this, we also have that kind of environment which is moving around us, like what activities are going on, what actions are taking place. We have video surveillance devices which now understands different activities around us. So that make us another edge over a static world. Like now we also have a dynamic kind of interaction with our environment. So AI devices are becoming more and more intelligent over time. A recent trend is like how to integrate edge computing, cloud computing with computer vision and AI, because the cloud computing is also another technology which has evolved recently, and we've seen its rise all around. AWS and other cloud partners are all around. So we see like there is a rise in cloud, and if we say like what's the cloud computing is, like it's a delivery of computing services. Basically it's a service kind of a business rather than a product based. It's like providing the AI IT services or computing services to the client using the internet in very rough terms. But what this edge computing is, and a similar notion of fog computing. So this is a bit advanced form of the cloud computing, I would say, like where we want the computation and the computing resources and the computation power much closer to the client. In other say, we can say the edge computing is the placement of data centers near the end devices which are very closer to the user. And one of the reason why we are thinking like we want to address the notion of latency, because if the response is needed from the centralized server which is far away, so there will be latency involved. So how can we resolve this latency if we want to resolve it, like the computation resources must be closer to the user and closer to the endpoint. So that's one of the motivation of edge computing. So we can take decisions in real time, in other sense. So it's about all the distributed computational resources are now closer to the edge point. And it gives us a lot of edge as well, because it's a kind of a benefit which we really want. And we can see this kind of a rise of edge computing in future, where in case if you have driverless cars all around you, and if they have to take a real-time decisions, and they are in some kind of a terrain or in such kind of environment where there's no internet connection available, so they have to still have to take that decisions, and they can take the decisions with the help of edge devices. Recently, different vendors has come up with different products about cloud computing, and especially the edge computing, which include Intel, and also from AWS Deep Lens and Panorama. Similarly, from Google, we have Coral and Development Board. So these are just a few of them, those devices which are available as edge devices. And they provide a really nice interface, which you can do with any sort of small computer like Raspberry Pi. So we can connect them as a USB device or something, so which is easier to maintain, easier to develop such kind of a system which can help these complex problems to resolve. Some of the devices which we used is like AWS Deep Lens, and today I'm going to discuss about it. And also about the cloud-based different solutions for the computer vision. So in our research lab, one of our strong focus is computer vision for ecology. How can we serve the environment, which includes many projects. Some projects are related to the plant health, trees health, vegetation health assessments. And I'm going to discuss some of these projects. We also working on a biodiversity, like how different invasive animals, if they are threat to the environment, how can we detect them and identify them and remove them? And similarly, the plants, like any plant diseases, which are harmful to the environment, like how can we detect them and then keep our environment safe? There are some of the projects which are based on the citizen science. Okay, so today I'm going to discuss about 3 projects briefly, which kind of is showcase projects for us. One is like we want to work on the real-time plant disease diagnosis. This work was recently published. Most of the technique which we have seen, they use some kind of data sets, and most of the data sets which try to diagnose plant diseases. There's a lot of work in the literature which use computer vision for diagnosis of plant diseases, mostly based on some sort of visual features on the leaves, the plant leaves, and also on the fruits. So we have similar kind of a notion. There are some huge data sets available called Plant Village dataset, which has many different images of the leaves, but usually all of these images have some sort of a artificial background, like white or gray background. So the idea is like if we want to do some kind of diagnosis in our environment, so that wouldn't be the same. That will be more realistic. We will have some occlusion, some other kind of things as a challenge. So recently we have many devices which are connected to the cloud and available as an edge devices. So can we use them to solve this problem in real time and in a more real world kind of a scenario? So we decided to use the and try AWS Deep Lens, which is a very good interface between the cloud and your local computer. So you can, on one way, you can connect to your device, and on the other hand, you can. It has a connection to the cloud. A connection in a sense like you can import machine learning models on it, and then they can run in a real time. You can start as a pilot project within your backyard and start like testing it, like how it goes, and then you can expand and apply it into any agriculture product or any field or on a high level basis. Essentially, the most of the mechanism, as you know, like depends how to use CNN or convolution neural networks, which has given a rise to most of the computer vision progress these days. We also decided to use a similar kind of a network over the cloud. So we use AWS SageMaker and develop our own CNN with blend of its layers based on convolution layers, pooling, and fully connected layers. We tried to simplify it. The reason was we didn't want to have a very high-end kind of a CNN, because we wanted it to the lightweight, because that's good for the end device. So how it works is like the AWS has provided different services, which include serverless kind of functions like called Lambda Functions. They provide a good interface between your edge device and also between the SageMaker, where you develop your machine learning model. So you first develop your model in SageMaker and try to use Lambda function to bring an interface, to connect an interface between the AWS Deep Lens and the SageMaker. We were able to, we tried many different, all most popular models for CNN. But our model was a bit different because we tried to simplify the things. So there were many different models for the detection of different diseases. There are 28 different diseases related to the leaves. And this is a comparison between the algorithm which we developed with a very lightweight, very few features, not advanced features in it, like we try to, but it can perform really well in real time compared to other techniques with a good accuracy. So it provides us this, like, I'm not boasting about the algorithm. What I'm boasting is like with the help of edge devices, now the things become real time, and we can solve, we can use transfer learning, and their model already exists. We can just use those models with the integration of cloud and integration of edge devices. We can solve many real world problems, and this is just one way of solving a problem. Another practical very projects which we have done recently, it was also cloud-based project for the sake of biodiversity. So the challenge was like in Australian landscape, we have many different pest animals, including rabbits, European rabbit, and also kangaroos, feral pigs. So they are very, very invasive animals which destroy farmlands, also destroy the environment, and also they are a threat to many species which are rare species. So the Australian government, many different projects are already in existence, which are trying to identify, detect, and try to eradicate these invasive species. And the idea is like how the computer vision and how the cloud can really help to solve same problem with a different angle. Usually it is done through the drone or a helicopter. So usually in the past, people used to use helicopter flights. They just go identify the animals and just kill them. That's one of the way it used to be. But now you can get the drones into the picture. So you can take a drone flight, get their population size, how much population size they have, and then you identify the population size. And then if you go for killing and you come back and say like how many of them are killed and what's the population size left. So these kind of population analysis and estimation can be done with the help of computer vision. Similarly, in the farmlands as well, like if the rabbits and their habitat, they resides under the land. Like in that scenario, it's very difficult to identify how many of them are there and where they are, and it's a big challenge for the farmlands. So the farmers, they have their own drones, they fly over it, they get all the videos and footage, but then that footage is usually hours long footage. And if you go frame by frame, if you go through it, identify how many animals are there, at what point they are, it's a lot of labor intensive work. So can we use computer vision and AI to solve this problem? So so the department has shared some of the videos because it's a funded project. So so the drone flights are the helicopter flights because they are well above the target, because they don't want to distract the target. They collect some of the videos which are thermal videos, and thermal signatures are not quite visible because they are the small animals, especially the rabbits. They are pretty small and their signatures identification is very difficult. And also similar to feral pigs and kangaroos, these are the three main invasive species which we targeted. So their identification from the video was a bit challenged because of their size and because of their signatures. Sometimes it's very difficult to identify the animal because many different animals look very similar, like the sheep. If you look at sheep and you also look at the pigs, so maybe they look very similar. So the idea was like there are many models which really help us to identify objects and object detection. We have seen RCN and mask RCN and others. And one of the most important one is called YOLO. But the YOLO also has its limitations because YOLO performs really well if the object is clear enough. Imagery is high resolution imagery, and usually the performance is very good. But in our scenario, the images and the videos was very low quality because of different timings and because of different environment factors and noise. And also the target is pretty small. So one of the trick which we used to counter the small target is using a version of convolutions called dilated convolutions, because they try to widen the kernel or the filter size, and then you convolve, like you increase the receptor field. And then we try to modify the original model or architecture of YOLO to make it compatible and really performing well for small animals. So we changed some of the architecture of darknet and also the feature pyramid in this network so that it's now performing relevant to the small target detection. So the small target detection you can see in these images, like the target is pretty small, and we were able to identify these targets in good precision. This is one of the videos which it's a pretty long video, so I just skip some part of it. These are some of the detection of the rabbit. So we not only detect the targets, we also identify their IDs and their counts. So their population count and also their geographical locations, like where are they. So they are identified at the end of the video. Okay, so we can train it for a single species, but generally, you know that there are more than one species. So we have to train our data for more than one species. Sometimes there are cows, goat, deer, horses. So there are much more stuff going on there, especially the feral pigs, very difficult to identify. This is another video where the terrain is not clear. So we have long trees. These all eucalyptus trees are there. And within some of the target available, they are moving targets. A lot of occlusion is there. Okay, so this is another. Okay, so the last thing was to embed something into it, like not only the detection, but the geographical location and geotagging is also done, like where they are, where were they moving. These moving targets and their population size can be identified, and they can be used by the relevant authorities for their better management. Okay, so that was for the sake of biodiversity. The third project, which is a very long scale project, which I'm working on in vegetation health assessment, both in urban setting and also in the outside in the regional areas. So we have different kind of vegetation. So there are many different projects going on. One is to finding out the biomass of the vegetation. We also looking for the vegetation biomass over a year of time, like how different seasonal effects change. But this is all not based on, this is all based on RGB images. And most of the index are developed on RGB. One of the projects which the state of Victoria developed, and we are partners in it, is called Flucker Post project. So there are different open spaces where we wanted to find out how the vegetation has affected over time. So these the post on the right side is like where the internet address of the cloud site is given, where different visitors, where they it's a citizen science project. So any visitor visit the area, they take a photo from any angle with any camera, and then they upload on the given address just to contribute to the environment monitoring. So we get a very large data set where images of the same scenes are available, but you can see the challenge. The challenge is huge. The challenge is like because it's done by different visitors, by different cameras, by different viewpoints. So we have different viewpoints. Here the viewpoints are very similar, but most of the images are quite diverse kind of viewpoint variation. Seasonal effects are there, like the vegetation is not always green. It may have different colors based on, it also has different image quality because different cameras have different quality and resolution. So out of this huge data set, like how can we identify? So it definitely is not a manual works, like we have to develop some techniques which can first do this analysis. But before we do any analysis, the first thing is to develop some sort of alignment or registration technique, like the all images belong to same scene. We tried simpler local interest point shift-based techniques, but it didn't work because there was a huge variation. So in that huge variation, most of the points were, and the correspondence is very low number of correspondences. And we decided to use the CNN-based features, and we developed a technique for CNN-based registration, where the dense CNN features helped us to have a fine invariant descriptor was developed, which help us to align these images. So once all the images are collected around the scene, then they are aligned, they are registered together. And once they are registered, now we are able to find out. The next target is in the regional environment, and also in the urban environment as well. We have different forestry, urban forestry, and also trees all around. So those trees and their biomass and also their health monitoring and their health assessment was a bit challenged. So we use different computer vision techniques to identify for the previous projects. Like we needed to identify some sort of index, a vegetation index, which is invariant to the color changes and invariant to the other changes. So we developed an index which is based on the semantic index, not on the color, which can find out the semantic pixels which are related to vegetations and finding out like what's the biomass. And then we plot it. In the urban settings, we not only looking for the vegetation at the trees, we also looking for their health, like how health we can identify the trees. So different councils in Melbourne City, they were interested to know once how many trees are there, what are their count, and most of the trees, like once they have a survey, how healthy they were, and after some times so usually manual surveys used to run, where a staff member go to visit and see if any tree is damaged, and then identify. It's quite a labor intensive work. So the idea was like, can we automate it with the help of computer vision? So the first thing is like we needed to use two different modalities. One is like based on the Google Street View, which is usually updated after 1 to 3 years time. So by the time it is updated, during that time, many things happen. So we have to have another visual survey of all the trees in the area. So these survey results, we needed to align with the captured imagery, and because they are taken from different angles and different views to identify them, and their alignment was the very first step. Like once we are able to identify and align them properly, and then we make sure like they are the same tree, are the same features, which is based on a contrast of loss function. We use a Siamese network to find out whether they are, how similar these trees look like. Okay, and once we identify it's the same tree, then we are actually looking for some of the features which belonging to unhealthy trees. So these features can be treated as an object. So we can use a regressor to identify those areas of the trees which are damaged, or which have a disease in it, or which are unhealthy, and then doing a kind of binary classification, like which trees are healthy and unhealthy trees. So this is a kind of a framework which we used to identify healthy and unhealthy trees within a local council, and we can do their counting and finding out how many trees and are unhealthy and where are they located, so that the council can go and fix them. This is some of the detections which we can see, like some of the trees look very healthy and some of them are not healthy, to identify the reason why they are unhealthy, so the councils can go and visit. These are some of the areas where we can see. So overall, we can see there are a lot more can be done. There are just some of the projects which I have just shared briefly. And most of the work which I have presented today is published, so you can access it online as well, the details. So we can see, like, by integrating cloud and integrating edge devices and with computer vision, we can solve many of the problems where there are a lot of intensive manual work was involved. And we have also seen a challenge because there was a lack of reliability on AI, on computer vision in the past, and people doubt, because most of the settings in the experimental setting was in the labs, and the data sets which were available, they also captured in a very specific kind of environment. But now we can test these devices, we can test these techniques and algorithm in real time and also in a real world settings, because now we have access to those devices, especially the edge devices, and also the cloud-based setup, which can really help us to first train these algorithms, making it accessible everywhere through the cloud, and then using the edge devices and importing our computer vision algorithms on these edge devices and finding out like they are really working. So this is the trend. I think it will continue for the benefit of our society. Thank you very much. So I'm happy to take any questions, like if you send me your questions. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thanks, everyone.